Hey there, fellow loom knitters. Do you want your loom knits to lay flat and keep their shape as well as show off those stitches like a pro? If you said yes, then it's time to block. Today, we're going to be looking at 2 easy ways to polish our loom knits: wet blocking and dry blocking. Blocking might sound fancy, but it's actually one of the most simplest ways to level up our loom knits. And yep, we're going to do it on a budget. Easy tools, big results. As a knitwear designer with several patterns available on Ravelry, over the years I've learned a thing or two about budget-friendly tools and their alternatives, which of course I'm going to share with you today. But if you do something different, by all means leave it in the comments below. So what is blocking and why do we do it? Well, blocking actually relaxes the stitches and it allows us to create straight edges. In addition to that, it shows off all those stitches that we've spent so much time on. It'll show off any details like increasing and decreasing. Now, it's okay to skip blocking altogether, especially if it's for like a hand towel or a face cloth that you've made and you're going to be using it yourself. I wouldn't even bother blocking anything like that. However, if you're giving it as a gift, something that you've made, you're going to want it to hang evenly, so no bunchy corners and twisted edges or anything like that. Now, if you've actually invested the time in making a sweater with shaping, well, you're going to want it to be crisp and clean and just look amazing. So blocking is definitely worth the extra time. So let's start with wet blocking. That's the perfect method to use when we're dealing with natural fibers. And by natural fibers, I'm talking about cotton, linen, hemp, wool, cashmere, silk, all of those natural fibers, especially if they've been hand dyed. You're going to want to spend extra time and care with those. Some things we're going to need when we wet block: a small container or sink to soak our projects in for at least 15 minutes, mild soap, an old clean towel, and some foam mats, as well as some stainless steel pins. The first thing that you'll need for wet blocking is soap. So there are different types on the market. This is my go-to. It is actually about 3 ounces or 100 mils, and it has lasted me for about 5 years because I only use about a capful per sweater, per shawl, whatever. So I'm going to have to get some more soon, but as I said, 5 years. This was given to me one of the fleece and fiber festivals that I've gone to, and I've got a couple of those, and there's enough. In fact, there's a lot in here. So what I'll probably end up doing is when this bottle's empty, I'll put this in there. Now this brand, this Soak, this comes in lovely fragrances, just amazing. So if you like smelly things, and I mean that in a good way, then Soak might be your alternative instead of the Eucalin. Now, having said that, those are specialty soaps and I don't need to rinse, which is why I like them, and I'll spend a little bit more on them, because once I've soaked my project for about 15 minutes minimum, then I can just take it out of the water and squeeze out the excess water, wring it out and roll it out in the towel, get even more out there. But then I don't have to rinse it again. Now, having said that, you can use Woolite or even dish soap, like Dawn dish soap. That's fine. But you have to rinse those, because otherwise the soap residue will remain on your knitwear and that'll make it dull and a little bit stiff as well. So you have to rinse those soaps out. But these, it's one and done, which I'm all about that. I'm a little lazy, what can I tell you? But those are some options for your soap, so keep that in mind. Whatever you've got on hand works. After you've soaked your piece in lukewarm water for about 15 minutes, gently squeeze out the excess water. Don't wring it. Larger items we can roll in a towel. The drier they are to begin with, the less time it will take to dry on the mat. If you wanted to speed things up or block a particular section, like a collar, you can, instead of soaking the whole piece in water, you can just use a spray bottle to dampen that area. Lay the piece flat on a couple of dry towels or a foam mat. Shape it with your hands, making sure the corners are square and the edges are smooth. Begin in one corner and pin one edge to the desired length. Use a ruler to help with sizing. This won't matter as much if you're doing a shawl or a wrap, but another tool that is optional but comes in handy is your measuring tape. That's something that you can lay down on the blocking mat or whatever surface you're using and have that create a straight edge. It will also make sure that your sleeves are the same size. You saw that I used the T-square that my husband has, so I borrowed that from him. And so, I mean, you use what you've got. Be creative. Pins, blocking pins. Normally, they are T-pins and they're in the shape of a T, hence the name. They're about 2 inches long, and they can be used. They're not very expensive. I mean, that's like a Walmart purchase, Fabricville, whatever fabric store is close to you. And if you don't have those, but you are a quilter, you could use quilting pins because they are actually about 2 inches long as well. And you can see they've got that little head on them, so that's rather convenient. Just an idea. That's an alternative for you. But the blocking pins, as I said, the actual T-pins are not that expensive. You're going to need a crap ton of them because the bigger your project, the more pins you're going to need to hold it down, because the pins should be about an inch, inch and a half apart, depending on your project. If you're doing, if you've got a shawl or anything that's got like a picot edge, you'd have to put a pin in every point. So as I said, depending on your style and what you're looking for will determine how many pins you'll need. But as I said, they're not that expensive. Now, there are a lot of deluxe tools out there that can make the job go faster and make it easier as well. One of them would be blocking pads. So you've got these blocking pads, and you can see there's a grid line in here. That would help keep your edges straight. And if you wanted two things the same size, so if you're blocking some sleeves, you would be able to use the grid lines as a measuring tool as well. Some blocking pads actually have curves on them, which would help with those circular shawls or a shoulder. One of my girlfriends loaned me her blocking rods. They come in a tube, and they are incredibly flexible. So the idea is that you thread the blocking rod through your circular shawl, your shoulder, and then pin it down on your blocking pads. Here I've used blocking rods to compare the difference with and without. After the rods have been woven into the edges, you can see how much easier it is to manipulate the fabric, and also less pins are needed, making this process go much more quickly. One of the tools as well are blocking pins that come in blocks of 4 or 8, and when you put in one, you actually are inserting 4 pins at once. So these are lovely toys to have or borrow from generous friends. Before removing your blocking pins, make sure that your project is completely dry. If you have any peaks or your edge is not as smooth as you'd like, gently massage it, and you can see how easily these peaks get rubbed away. But because this is blocking on a budget, let's focus in on the tools that you actually need. I spoke about blocking mats, but if you don't have a blocking mat, that's not a problem. You can use a yoga mat. Alternatively, you could use the foam mats from your kids. Borrow them when they're not in use. Even the little alphabet ones that have the letters that pop out, you can use those. You can stack a couple of towels on your living room carpet, especially if it's got underlay. That's a non-issue right there. There are, some of those Amazon boxes are flippin' huge. You can repurpose that stuff and, just wash the box down, break it out, and lay it flat. Presto, you've got yourself a blocking mat right there. The other method of blocking is dry blocking, also known as steam blocking, which is the method that you use when you're using acrylic. So those man-made fibers should be blocked using steam. And you can also use the steam on your natural products as well if you're in a hurry, because it's a quick solution as well. For the dry blocking method, there are some lovely handheld steamers out there, and by all means, go wild. However, if you're blocking on a budget, like yours truly, and your iron, your everyday iron, has a steam setting, you're all set, because that's all you need. Now you could use a linen napkin or a hand towel dampened if you want to put it between your actual project and the iron, just as an extra layer of protection. That is an option as well. Dry blocking tools that you'll need: an iron that has a steam setting, a spray bottle, a towel, and an ironing board or a flat surface if you don't have an ironing board. Stands to reason if you've got an iron, chances are you've got an ironing board though. Lay your project flat and shape it on the ironing board, so uncurl any edges. Hover the steam iron or the steamer about an inch above the fabric. Don't press. Let the steam relax those fibers and be patient. My biggest challenge, be patient. Smooth the edges out gently with your hands while the fabric is still warm. So you're basically shaping it as well as you go, and let it cool completely before removing it from the ironing board. My tip or suggestion to you is to start dry blocking your piece at a very unobvious spot. So if it's a sweater, start at the back on the bottom. If it's a shawl, start at a corner. A scarf, one end. So that once you get the hang of it, then you can move on to the rest of your piece. Because I have actually killed material, but thankfully it was way at the back at the bottom. So unless someone's checking out my butt, they're not going to notice the killed fabric. Just saying. So steam blocking works wonders on acrylic, but you've got to be careful and you've got to be patient. You need to hold the iron or steamer about an inch and a half away from your material. And even if you have a damp cloth in between, still do not touch the damp cloth with the iron because you'll kill the material. Keep in mind, acrylic is essentially plastic. That's where its base is. So too much heat is going to melt the plastic, which kills your material. So all your hard work, all those beautiful stitches will get flattened and molded together. And I mean, what I did was I took that really ugly swatch, and one side is properly blocked. You can still see the texture in the pattern. The other side I deliberately killed and melted the fabric, and that's pretty much what that means. And you'll notice that by melting it, I've taken away any of its volume. The fabrics, the fibers have just melted, and even though I tried to rub it and massage it and whatnot, it did have a sheen. It doesn't now because the rubbing, trying to gain more volume, just made it fuzzy. So the ugly swatch became even uglier. So lesson learned, hold the steamer or iron about an inch away from your fabric and be patient. Experience has taught me that when I am wet blocking with natural material, and if it's a sweater, I mean a shawl, it's not an issue because it's all in one, but when it's a sweater and you've got pieces that you're going to connect, with natural fibers, I will actually block the pieces separate and then sew them together and assemble my sweater. Whereas if I'm using acrylic yarn and I'm dry blocking, I will actually assemble everything first because I find it easier to manipulate the garment on the ironing board when it's all in one piece. So that's just an extra tip from me to you. So depending on the yarn you're using will determine which method of blocking that you're going to be using. Natural fibers should be wet blocked. Man-made fibers should be dry blocked. And you can tell that no matter which way you block, there's going to be an elevation in your loom knits. And here's a quick look at the unblocked versus the blocked swatches. And you can see how the stitches and the shaping all comes in line and everything just pops and looks that much neater. Definitely worth the time and effort to do the blocking. And you don't need fancy equipment, just household items along with a little bit of time and patience. Easy tools, big results. So if this helped level up your loom knits, by all means hit that like button and subscribe. And of course, hit the notification button too, because there'll be more tutorials and techniques coming your way. Until next time, I'm Stacey from Stitches by Stacey. Thanks for watching.